The cry of a newborn tore through the silence of the lakeside mansion on Lake Michigan. It was not the cry of an ordinary infant, but a chain of hoarse, unrelenting sobs that echoed along marble corridors, circled beneath vaulted ceilings and velvet drapes, turning the multi-million-dollar house into a cold, resounding cage. Oliver was barely 2 months old, his face flushed red, his tiny fists clenched as though holding on to life itself. He had been crying for 3 hours straight, his frail wails thinning into raspy gasps. The bottle in the nursery lay abandoned, the milk inside long since cooled, sourness seeping into the air. The one person hired to care for him, Sienna Clark, a high-end nanny from a prestigious agency, had left that afternoon with the excuse of buying special formula. But everyone knew she was laughing her way through the shopping mall, high heels clicking beside bags of luxury goods. Downstairs, Maya Rivera knelt on the polished floor, gripping a worn rag. Recently hired to handle odd jobs in the mansion, she was all but invisible in the cavernous house. Yet to Maya, each cry that drifted down cut like a blade into wounds that had never healed. 6 weeks earlier, she had lost her firstborn before the baby had even opened his eyes to the world. Night after night, she startled awake, haunted by phantom cries in her head, and now the real sound filled her eyes with tears. "The baby will collapse from exhaustion," Maya whispered, her hand trembling on the cold stone. She bit her lip until it bled, forcing herself to focus on a tiny stain before her, as if that act of diligence could drown out reality. But nothing could smother the desperate cries adrift in the gilded halls. In another room, Graham Whitaker sat before a glowing screen, his gaunt face bathed in the blue light of an online meeting. On screen, investors from Tokyo discussed profits, market shares, dividends. But in Graham's ears, everything was shredded by his son's cries. He gripped his pen hard, forcing his voice into calm. "Yes, gentlemen, you can trust in our plan." As soon as he spoke, his eyes flicked toward the photo frame on the desk. A young woman with a gentle smile, Claire, his wife, who had died in childbirth. The image crushed his chest with grief. Once, Graham had been the man who could sign billion-dollar deals with a nod. Now, he was powerless before the cries of a child too young to call him father. He forced himself back to numbers, but his mind had already left the room. Upstairs, Oliver still wailed, lips cracked, chest heaving as though each breath might be the last. Maya lifted her gaze toward the ceiling, the cries raining down like an alarm meant only for her. Her chest ached, her body still produced milk, though her baby was gone. Each drop was a cruel reminder that she had no one left to cradle, no one left to nourish. And now, another fragile life was fading from hunger just above her. She set the rag aside, hands clasping together, shaking. Private grief and primal instinct knotted tight, pulling her to her feet. The dark wood staircase stretched before her, shadows like a final test. She drew a deep breath, whispering like a prayer, "Lord, don't let anything happen to this child." Step by step, Maya climbed, leaving behind the grand but empty house, moving toward the cries that thinned to a thread on the verge of breaking. The nursery door creaked open, and Maya froze at the sight before her. Oliver lay in the dark wooden crib, his face flushed crimson, lips cracked, cries now reduced to faint, rasping wheezes. His tiny body trembled, his clothes soaked in sweat, his clouded eyes unfocused. On the table beside the crib, a forgotten bottle reeked with sour stench, clotted milk like a cruel verdict. Maya rushed forward, trembling hands lifting the infant. Oliver burned like a coal in her arms. He opened his mouth, searching blindly, lips quivering into empty air. Maya held him tighter, her heartbeat pounding, her throat tightening. My God, if I don't do something, he won't survive. In that moment, memory came crashing back. 6 weeks earlier, in the sterile white of a hospital room, Maya had cradled her own son. Silent, breathless, never crying. Her body had still produced milk, mocking her with a reminder that her arms were empty. Night after night, her chest ached with painful fullness, and tears had flowed in rivers. Now the child in her arms was not her own, yet his cries, his desperate breath, tore open the same wound. Oliver cried as though awakening something primal in her, the instinct of a mother. Her eyes darted to the soured bottle, revulsion rising. There was no other way. The child would die if left to that poisoned milk. And so, in a moment stripped of reason, she surrendered every boundary. She sank into the chair by the window, hands shaking as she fumbled at the buttons of her blouse. With tears streaking her face, she pressed Oliver to her chest. Guided by instinct, the baby latched immediately. The hoarse cries ceased, replaced by greedy, urgent sucking. His breath slowed, steadied. The tension in his face softened, yielding to the serenity of an angel. Maya sat motionless, arms cradling the fragile life. The sensation was both familiar and strange. Hot tears streamed down her cheeks, falling into Oliver's fine hair. She whispered, voice breaking, as though speaking to her lost son. "Sleep. You're safe now. Mama's here." The room, once filled with shrill cries, was hushed. Only the rhythm of 2 heartbeats remained. Outside the window, the last light of day slipped through the curtain, laying a soft golden veil across them. As if the world itself had paused to witness a tiny soul reclaim life. Inside Maya, shattered pieces of grief began to form into something new. For 6 weeks, her body had carried the curse of loss, milk no one would ever need. But now, that very milk was saving a child. Each drop was redemption, not only for Oliver, but for her own broken heart. She clutched him tighter, afraid the world might once again rip this moment away. She forgot everything. Her place as a mere housemaid, the judgment of others, even the fear that Graham Whittaker could walk in at any second. There was only her and Oliver, a child clinging to life, and a woman clinging to the reason to keep breathing. Time stopped. Oliver drank his fill, eyelids fluttering closed, tiny fingers clutching her blouse as if unwilling to let go. Maya bent down, pressing a tender kiss to his damp forehead. For the first time in countless nights, she felt a hint of true peace. But peace lasted only minutes. The door gave a faint click. Footsteps sounded. Maya jolted, her heart plummeting. A tall shadow filled the doorway, and she froze. Graham Whittaker stood there, his face gaunt, eyes ringed with exhaustion, but blazing now with shock. He stopped dead, as though the world had halted. Before him was the sight of a thin young woman in a plain cleaning uniform, bathed in sunlight, holding his son in her arms and nursing him. The glass in Graham's hand slipped through his fingers, shattering on the floor. The air thickened. Maya flinched, hastily tugging her blouse closed, yet refusing to release Oliver. The child slept soundly, lips milk-stained, breath steady. Graham's eyes widened, his chest heaved, his voice gravelly, stunned. What are you doing with my son?" The air hung heavy. The sound of shattering glass still rang in Graham's ears, but he hardly noticed. Every sense was consumed by the sight before him, A young woman, hair disheveled, eyes swollen with tears, seated in the armchair with his son fast asleep in her arms, lips still wet with milk. Maya trembled, instinctively clutching Oliver closer to her chest in a defensive embrace. Her breath came fast, chest rising and falling. She tried to speak, but her throat was parched. "Sir, I can explain." Graham stepped inside, the door closing behind him with the weight of a slammed gate. His eyes burned with a mix of fury and shock. He could hear his own heartbeat pounding, each beat like a drum. "Do you have any idea what you've just done?" His voice was low, hoarse. "Did you think I hired you for this?" Tears spilled over as Maya shook her head again and again. "No, that wasn't my intention. He'd been crying for hours. The bottle was spoiled. I couldn't just stand there and watch. I couldn't let something awful happen." Her voice broke, hands trembling. "I know I overstepped, but please understand. I only wanted to save him." Graham's gaze dropped from her face to Oliver, and in that instant, he saw it. His son was no longer crying. For the first time in weeks, Oliver's face was serene, skin flushed with life, breath steady. A part of Graham wanted to whisper, "Thank you," but his cold logic screamed, "She's not his mother. This is madness." He turned his head sharply, fighting the storm inside. "You had no right. You are not his mother." Maya bowed her head, tears falling into Oliver's fine hair. "I know. I don't dare dream of being his mother. But can't you see? Without me, your son might not be breathing right now." Graham clenched his fists. Memories surged. Claire, his wife, gone in the delivery room. The vow he had made to her, that he would protect their son at any cost. And now, a stranger cradled the boy as though he were her own. Grief and a strange, jealous ache twisted in his chest. He stepped closer, lowering himself toward Maya, his voice breaking. "Give me my son." Maya lifted her tear-streaked face, lips trembling. "Please don't. Let him sleep a little longer. It's the first time he's known peace." Their eyes met. One belonging to a father widowed, the other to a mother bereaved. Both carried voids nothing could fill, but instead of bridging them, the void widened into a chasm. Oliver stirred faintly, his tiny hand clutching a fold of Maya's blouse. The sight stabbed deep into Graham's heart. He pulled the child back, his movements betraying a tremor. Oliver whimpered softly, furrowed his brow, but remained asleep. Maya sat frozen, arms empty now, her wide eyes filled with despair. "I'm sorry, but please believe me, I meant no harm. I only followed the instinct of a mother." Graham stood motionless, holding his son, drawing a deep breath as though to smother the storm inside. His heart brimmed with gratitude, but his mind erected walls of iron. He turned, voice cutting and cold. "Get out of this room." Now Maya staggered to her feet, vision blurred with tears, and walked toward the door. Before leaving, she glanced back, eyes carrying an unspeakable ache. "I beg you, believe that I only wanted to save him." The door closed. Silence fell heavy. Graham held Oliver, staring at the boy's tranquil face. Inside his chest, two voices clashed violently. She saved my son, and she crossed a boundary no one should ever cross. He shut his eyes, clutching Oliver tighter, but the weight of doubt pressed like a ghost. In his mind, the doctor's warning echoed. Newborns are more fragile than anything. A single misstep could cost a life. He had just seen his child soothed in another woman's arms, yet he feared sickness, scandal, ruin. And that very contradiction boiled into anger he had nowhere to release. Sienna Clark returned to the mansion that evening, arms weighed down with glittering designer bags. The bright smile painted in red lipstick faltered when she sensed the heavy atmosphere pressing through the house. Graham barely glanced at her, holding Oliver close in his arms, his eyes sunken, his face shuttered. Maya was gone. No trace of her in the kitchen or down the marble hallways. Sienna tilted her head, eyes narrowing as though sniffing out a secret. She dropped onto the sofa, feigning nonchalance while slipping off her new heels. Her voice carried an airy sweetness. "Mr. Whitaker, is the baby doing any better?" "I spent the whole afternoon hunting down that special formula the doctor recommended." Graham cast her a cold glance, his tone sharp as ice. "Really? Then do you care to explain why my newborn was left starving to the point of collapse?" For a flicker of a moment, Sienna faltered, but quickly she summoned a defensive smile. It must have been a little mix-up. But speaking of which, have you noticed how overly attached Maya seems to Oliver? Don't you find that strange?" The words dropped like poison seeds. Graham said nothing. He only tightened his hold on his son and strode upstairs, leaving Sienna behind with a sly, poisonous smirk. It took just one phone call, a few messages in the Ladies of Lakeview group, the circle of wealthy wives from the lakeside neighborhood, for the story to mutate. "I heard the maid in the Whitaker house actually nursed the baby herself." Good heavens, that's disgusting. Who knows what kind of diseases she might have. A woman who just lost her child is bound to be unstable. "I heard she cradles the boy as if he were her own." The rumor spread like wildfire in dry grass. By morning, the whole community buzzed. Coffee meetups turned into gossip courts, every word branding Maya as that dangerous girl in Graham's house. The next day, Graham's phone rang incessantly. One call came from Mrs. Langley, a 50-year-old with meticulously permed hair, infamous for her loose tongue. Her voice oozed false concern. "Graham, dear, I had to call the moment I heard. You must be careful. A young girl, grieving her own loss, now holding your boy like that. People are saying she's trying to replace Claire." Graham's brow knotted, his reply sharp. "Mrs. Langley, don't believe every piece of gossip you hear." "Gossip!" Her pitch rose indignantly. "The entire women's circle is talking. They whisper she's obsessed, unhinged after losing her child. You must protect your family, protect your reputation." Each word sliced like a blade. Graham ended the call and hurled the phone onto the desk, dragging in a ragged breath. But the echo lingered, circling in his mind. Protect your reputation, protect your family. In the kitchen, Maya caught fragments from the house phone. The words dangerous, it's obsessed, trying to take over. Her heart clenched, her hands tightened until her knuckles split. That night, when Graham summoned her into his study, the air was suffocating, like a courtroom without witnesses. He stood behind the massive oak desk, the desk lamp casting shadows across his face. Oliver slept in the nursery. Only the two of them remained. "Maya," his voice was low, steady but hard. "Do you know what people are saying?" Her head bowed, lips trembling. "I've heard, sir. But please believe me, I never intended to take anything. I only saved him. Isn't that right?" Graham cut in, his eyes storm-tossed. "I won't deny it. But do you understand? To the world outside, you're no savior. They don't see your heart. They see a young maid, grieving her lost child, clutching my son. To them, you are a threat." Maya's words caught in her throat, tears streaming. She whispered, "If I were truly a threat, then why was Oliver only peaceful in my arms?" The question fell into the silence like a dagger, striking straight. Graham offered no answer. The weight of gossip, the eyes of the neighborhood, the murmurs of shareholders probing into his family problems, all wound around his neck like a tightening rope. He turned his face away, voice strained yet resolute. "There are things, Maya, where truth is not enough. In this world, appearances matter more than reality." Maya stumbled out, her heart shattered. Through the window, the golden lights of neighboring mansions glowed, but to her they were nothing but a crown of thorns closing in. All night, Graham lay restless. He sat hunched in his office, the lamplight spilling across the photo of Claire smiling back at him like a silent reproach. Outside the window, dark clouds gathered heavy, warning of an approaching storm. Oliver slept fitfully, his wheezing breaths carving into Graham's chest like knives. In his mind, two voices waged war. One whispered, "She saved your son. Be grateful." But the other roared louder, "She is not his mother. You must protect your family, protect your name. If the gossip continues, you'll lose everything." By the time dawn broke, his decision had hardened. Maya was summoned to the living room. She entered with swollen eyes after a sleepless night. Scratches still marked her hands from scrubbing the kitchen sink. Graham stood in the center of the vast room, his face chiseled like stone. "Maya." His voice was low and rough. "You cannot stay here any longer." The words hit the hardwood floor like a hammer. Maya staggered back half a step, her face paling. "Sir, please let me stay, at least until you find someone else for Oliver. He needs me." Graham avoided her eyes, his fists clenching. "I know what my son needs. And this is no longer your place." Tears spilled over as Maya dropped to her knees, her voice breaking. "I beg you. I'll leave afterward. Just give me a few more days. I can't abandon him now." For a fleeting moment, Graham nearly yielded. He remembered Oliver asleep in her arms, the first peace the child had known after countless nights of screaming. But then came the flood. Screenshots of gossip, whispers of investors, the cold faces of neighbors. He drew in a long breath, forcing his tone hard. "No. The decision is final. Gather your things and leave immediately." Silence pressed down on the room. Only the first patter of rain tapped against the tall windows. Maya rose, legs trembling, and picked up her worn handbag. Inside were just a few clothes and a small Bible her mother had left her. She stepped out the front door just as the sky broke open. Rain poured down in torrents, icy drops streaking over her hair, her face blending with her hot tears. Clutching her bag tight, her small figure dissolved into the storm. Upstairs, Oliver awoke, his cries shattering the air as though he sensed the loss. His face reddened, his little arms thrashing, reaching for the embrace he knew. Behind the thick curtain, Graham watched through the rain-smeared glass. Maya's figure blurred into the storm, each step cutting deeper into him. He wanted to run out, to scream, "Come back, don't leave him." But his feet stayed rooted, shackled by the invisible chains of public judgment. He yanked the curtain closed and collapsed into a chair, burying his hands in his hair. Oliver's wails echoed down the hall, mingling with the pounding rain on the roof, weaving a dirge that haunted the mansion. That night, Oliver barely slept. Cries grew hoarse, his body rejecting every bottle, fighting Sienna's arms as if they were foreign. Each time Graham tried to hold him, the boy writhed harder, sobbing until his tiny body shook. The father paced the marble halls, voice cracked from whispering comfort. Daddy's here, Oliver. You don't have to be afraid. But the more he spoke, the more powerless he felt. The mansion, once steeped in silence, now echoed like a prison of grief, walls reverberating with the desperate cries of a child. Each sob was a dagger, reminding Graham of the truth he could not escape. He had cast out the one person who brought his son peace. But it was too late. The door had closed, and the fragile silhouette had already vanished into the rain. The night rain lashed down like icy whips, striking the pavement glimmering under the fractured glow of streetlights. Maya staggered forward, her torn shoes soaked through, each step dragging as if weighted by stone. In a blur, her small handbag, the sum of all she had left, was snatched away by a young man as she paused outside a convenience store. She cried out, her voice faint against the roar of rain and revving engines. No one turned. No money, no papers, no shelter. Shivering, Maya slipped into a narrow alley, pressing herself beneath a shallow awning. Thunder cracked above, mocking, forcing her back into the bare truth. She had fallen as low as one could fall. A cough racked her chest. She pulled the thin, sodden blouse tight to her body, trembling violently. And in that moment, memories cut through, cold and merciless as the rain itself. She saw herself lying in the stark white glare of the hospital room, machines blaring in panic. A nurse placed into her hands a tiny, lifeless form. "I'm sorry. We tried everything. Premature." His lungs couldn't. The words still echoed like a sentence. Then another memory. The face of the man who once whispered sweet promises. When he learned she was pregnant, his words turned venomous before he vanished. "I never wanted this. You're on your own." All her years of savings dissolved into hospital bills after the baby's brief, tragic existence. She had left her rented room when she could no longer pay. The cleaning job at the Whitaker mansion had been her last refuge, at least a bed at night. And now even that fragile ground had crumbled beneath her. A group of ragged young men stumbled toward her, their laughter slicing through the storm. "Hey, look here! A stray bird! Want us to give you shelter?" Their words dripped with danger. Maya's instincts screamed. She turned and ran. Water splashed high under her feet, her heartbeat pounding louder than the thunder. She darted to the wall of an old church, crouching behind a mossy statue. The figures faded into the rain. Maya slid down, curling into herself, another cough tearing through. Her chest throbbed, milk leaking through her blouse, soaking it. The pain of past and present merged, and she wept, choking on the sound. "Oliver, do you remember me? Do you cry for me the way I ache for you?" Her voice trembled into the storm, fragile as if it might vanish. A hoarse voice broke through the night. "First night on the streets, isn't it, girl?" Maya jerked her head up. An old man stood before her, silver hair matted, coat soaked through. His face was etched with hardship, but his gaze held a surprising gentleness. I don't," she stammered. He nodded slowly, lowering himself beside her, holding out a tattered blanket. "I'm Bennett. Been out here over 10 years. I can tell the new ones. Still clean. Still a spark in your eyes. That's how the fresh ones always look." Tears welled again as Maya accepted the blanket, curling into its faint warmth. "Come on," Bennett motioned. "There's a safer place." "Under the bridge. A few of us stay there. Not much, but at least we've got each other." Maya followed numbly. Beneath the bridge, she found a small cluster. An old woman named Mercedes, homeless after her son's addiction destroyed their house. A man, once a factory worker, now crippled from an accident. a young drifter with a hardened face worn by failure. They sat around a rusty barrel where damp scraps of wood smoldered faintly. "There are rules here," Bennett explained slowly. "Share what you can. Watch each other's backs. And most of all, never lose your dignity." Even when everything else is gone, they offered Maya a piece of stale bread, a sheet of cardboard to lie on. She whispered thanks, tears pricking again. That night, curled beneath the bridge, the cold seeped into her bones. Yet for the first time in days, she didn't feel entirely alone. The darkness still pressed thick around her, but somewhere within it flickered the fragile glow of hearts fighting to endure. Just like hers. The first night without Maya, the mansion collapsed into chaos. Oliver cried from dusk until nearly dawn, his voice rasping on the verge of breaking. Sienna carried him in her arms, eyes glued to her phone, rocking him impatiently. "Stop crying already, Oliver. You're such a difficult little master," she muttered, shoving the bottle into his mouth. Oliver turned his head away, lips purplish, hands flailing. Milk dribbled down his chin, soaking his clothes. In the room next door, Graham paced like a man unmoored. He rushed in to take his son, his voice hoarse with pleading. "Daddy's here, Oliver. Please, just sleep a little." But the harder he held the boy, the sharper the cries grew, each one ripping through his chest. Tiny fingers clawed at his shirt, Oliver's face blazing red from screaming himself raw. By dawn, silence came not from comfort, but from exhaustion. Oliver finally drifted off, his eyes swollen, his breathing labored. Graham sank into a chair, his head dropping against his shoulder, his entire body drained. Never had he felt such helplessness. The next day worsened still. Oliver refused every bottle, no matter how many brands Graham tried. He would suck a few drops, then burst into tears, pushing the bottle away as though in defiance. The private doctor was summoned. A nurse attempted to cradle the baby, spooning milk in tiny measures. Oliver shook his head, spitting it out. After an hour of fumbling, sweat dotted her forehead. "Mr. Whitaker, I've never seen an infant resist so fiercely. It's as if he's rejecting the care itself." The words stunned Graham. He sat in silence, clutching his head, questions swarming. Why won't my son eat? By afternoon, Oliver burned with a low fever, his skin pale, eyes sunken. Another pediatrician, Dr. Annika Patel, was called in. She examined him thoroughly before speaking in a low, sorrowful tone. "Oliver isn't suffering from any grave illness. The issue is psychological. Even infants can spiral when they lose a bond they've grown attached to. This child is searching for the person he trusts." Graham's lips pressed tight. "You mean he misses Claire?" Dr. Patel shook her head gently. "Not necessarily the biological mother. Just someone who made him feel safe. Someone who cradled him, soothed him. A bond was formed." And then abruptly severed, Graham's heart grew heavy. The image of Maya flared in his mind. Her trembling arms holding his son, her tear-streaked face as she rocked him to sleep. He remembered the way Oliver looked at her chest, calm, trusting, as if he had found the breath of life itself. He swallowed hard, forcing steadiness into his voice. "There's no such person." "He'll be fine," Dr. Patel met his eyes, firm. "No, Mr. Whitaker. If this continues, the child could weaken dangerously. Hospitalization may become necessary after she left." Graham sat alone in the nursery. The dim, amber light stretched his shadow long across the wall. Oliver lay curled in the crib, eyes half closed, restless, soft whimpers cutting like knives into his father's heart. He leaned down, resting a hand against his son's chest, whispering, "Daddy's here, Oliver. I won't leave you. Please, don't leave me." But his plea dissolved into silence. Oliver whimpered faintly, breath heavy, body weary. That night, Graham paced the halls with his son in his arms. The chandelier lights shimmered above, mocking. The vast mansion reverberated with only two sounds: the relentless cries of a fragile child and the footsteps of a father drowning in despair. Oliver's cries echoed from the kitchen, reverberating through the vast hallway. Graham dropped the stack of files, his chest tightening. This wasn't the usual cry. It was sharp, desperate, like a plea for help. He raced down the stairs, footsteps pounding. In the kitchen, the golden light revealed a scene that froze him. Oliver lay in his small crib, face crimson from screaming, tiny fists thrashing wildly. Sienna wasn't holding him, but hunched over the counter, a spoon crushing a white tablet, tipping the powder into a bottle of milk. Beside her sat a cloudy glass jar, unlabeled and unfamiliar. Graham rushed to the crib, scooping Oliver into his arms. The baby's face was red, body trembling, tears soaking his cheeks as he wailed. "Shh, Daddy's here," Graham whispered, but his eyes stayed fixed on the counter. "What are you doing?" His voice cracked like thunder. Sienna jumped, nearly spilling the bottle. "Mr. Whitaker, don't misunderstand. It's just some medicine to help him sleep. You see how he cries without rest." Graham clutched his son tighter, strode forward and snatched the bottle from her hand. A strange, acrid odor hit his nose, chilling him to the bone. His eyes darted to the unmarked jar, his voice cutting like steel. "What is this? Why no label? And where are the prescribed medications Dr. Patel gave my son? The ones worth thousands of dollars. Where are they?" Sweat broke across Sienna's brow. She stammered, I put them somewhere else." "Where?" Graham roared. Silence. He yanked his phone from his pocket, his words seething. "If you don't tell me right now, I'll call the police. They'll test this bottle and you'll have no escape." Oliver sobbed violently in his arms, each sound hammering Graham's heart. Sienna trembled, her face drained white. Finally, she collapsed into a chair, sobbing. "All right, I'll tell you. I sold them, the special medication. My contact paid over $500 a box. I needed the money. I thought if I used sedatives instead, mixed into the milk, the baby would sleep more. You'd believe the medicine was working." Graham stood in stunned silence, his fists clenched until veins throbbed. But he wasn't finished. His voice fell into an icy growl. "Tell me everything. What else have you hidden? What other shameful thing haven't I seen?" Sienna froze, her eyes darting wildly. The threat of police still hung over her. Cornered, she broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. "It was me. I started the rumors about Maya. I said she was obsessed, dangerous, so you'd doubt her. I was jealous. I couldn't stand the thought of you valuing her more than me. But the truth is she saved your son that night. Without her, Oliver wouldn't be alive." The air froze. Graham staggered back, his mind spinning. Maya's image flared before him, trembling arms wrapped around Oliver, her tear-streaked face the baby's first peaceful sleep. He had seen it, undeniable, yet he had let himself be poisoned by lies. His phone slipped from his hand, landing on the counter with a hollow clack. Oliver whimpered weakly, his tiny face mottled with exhaustion. Graham held him tighter, whispering, "Daddy's here, Oliver. I'm sorry." When he lifted his head again, his eyes blazed toward Sienna. You'll leave this house immediately, and believe me, the police will know what you've done." Sienna collapsed, tears streaming, begging desperately, but Graham no longer heard her. In his mind, only one name echoed, carving deep like a blade. Maya. I drove away the only one who could save my son. Graham collapsed into a chair after Sienna's tearful confession. Oliver still sobbed in his arms, his tiny body trembling, breath shallow and uneven. Each hiccup cut into Graham's chest like a blade. In his mind, Sienna's words echoed mercilessly. It was Maya who saved the baby. Without her, he wouldn't have survived. He clutched his son tighter, his whole body shaking, guilt ripping him apart. He had driven away the only person Oliver needed. That night, sleep never came. Oliver cried until he was limp in Graham's arms, then startled awake again with piercing screams, his face purple from exhaustion. By dawn, Dr. Patel arrived, and after examining the infant, her brow furrowed. "If we don't find a solution immediately, we'll need to hospitalize him." But the truth is, Oliver's greatest problem isn't medical, it's psychological. The boy has lost the person he was most attached to. Graham looked down at his son, his heart twisting. He knew exactly who that person was, and now there was only one thing left to do. That very day, Graham began his search for Maya. He went to the boarding house where she had once stayed, but the landlord shook his head. She left weeks ago. No forwarding address, he scoured employment centers, combing through lists, but found no trace of Maya Rivera. At the church, he questioned the sisters, but each only shook her head. Each time he returned to the mansion, Oliver was weaker. The baby barely drank, only cried until his voice broke and then collapsed into uneasy sleep, his skin ashen. Graham sat by the crib, eyes bloodshot, whispering, "I'm sorry, Oliver. I will find her, at any cost." For 3 consecutive nights, Graham drove the city streets, passing through shadowed alleys and beneath bridges where figures huddled under ragged blankets. He lowered his window, holding out a faded photo from the mansion's employment file. "Have you seen this girl?" Brown hair, dark eyes, about 24. Most only shook their heads. Some waved him off harshly. "You think we keep track of every stray out here?" Others eyed him warily. "You a cop?" Graham could only shake his head and swallow the bitterness. On the 4th night, rain poured relentlessly. Water hammered his windshield, the wipers thrashing but failing to clear the torrent. Graham pulled over, burying his face in his hands. Never had he felt so powerless. A billionaire who could sign billion-dollar deals with a stroke of a pen, yet he could not find a young woman cast into the streets. In his mind, the image replayed of Maya leaving the mansion under the rain, clutching her small bag, her fragile silhouette swallowed by the storm. His chest constricted. He should have stopped her. He should have... The phone vibrated, an unfamiliar number. Graham snatched it up. A woman's cautious voice spoke. "Mr. Whitaker? This is Monica, from the next district. Yesterday I saw a girl who looked like the one from the news photos walking along the boulevard. She looked weak, barely able to stand. Graham's heart pounded. He scribbled the address and sped off into the night. But after hours of searching, there was no sign of Maya. The boulevard stretched endlessly, rain lashing white across the street, leaving only shimmering puddles under the streetlights. He stood on the sidewalk, breath ragged, hope dissolving into despair. The storm washed away his last thread of certainty. Pressing a hand to his forehead, he whispered, "Maya, where are you? My son needs you." Just as he prepared to leave, the phone buzzed again. A gravelly old voice came through the static. "You're the one looking for Maya, aren't you?" "Yes. Do you know where she is?" Graham nearly shouted. "I'm Bennett. I lived on the streets with her for a while. The girls suffered more than you can imagine. Why are you looking for her?" Graham's voice broke, nearly drowned by the rain. "Because I made a terrible mistake. I drove her away, even though she saved my son. Now the boy is fading, and only she can save him again. Please tell me where she is." Silence lingered, only the sound of rain tapping against the receiver. Then Bennett's voice returned, slow and deliberate. "She's under the Avenida Caracas bridge. But hear me, if you hurt her again, we won't forgive you." Graham gripped the wheel, his eyes blazing. "I swear, I will never let her suffer again." The car tore through the storm, tires slicing through rivers on the road. In Graham's chest, one flame burned fiercely. Find Maya before it was too late. The rain still poured like a waterfall. The black car sped through deserted streets, tires slicing water into splashes. Graham gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. A storm of fear swirled in his chest. What if I'm too late? What if Maya is no longer there? What if Oliver can't hold on? As the car neared the Avenida Caracas bridge, Graham slammed the brakes. Beneath the flickering streetlights, a frail figure hunched under a ragged blanket came into view. He leapt out into the downpour, rain drenching him instantly. "Maya!" he shouted, his voice cracking. She lifted her head. Her face was gaunt, eyes sunken, hair tangled and dripping. For a moment, Maya thought she was dreaming. The man who had cast her out now stood trembling in the rain, eyes red and swollen. "What? What are you doing here?" Her voice rasped. Graham moved closer, overcome with emotion. "I was wrong. Blind and foolish. Maya, Oliver is fading. He needs you. Please, save my son." Maya recoiled, clutching the thin blanket tighter. Her heart surged with old wounds. The memory of being forced out into the rain that night burned fresh. "Why should I trust you again? I've lost everything already. I can't let my heart break one more time." Graham dropped to his knees in the mud. "Please, take my life if you must. But don't abandon Oliver. He has no time left. I know only you can keep him alive." Rain mixed with sobs. Maya looked into his eyes. The eyes of a father stripped of pride, begging bare and desperate. A tremor ran through her. Deep inside, the instinct of a mother thundered louder than her pain. She let the blanket fall and stepped out from beneath the bridge. "All right. Take me to him." The car tore through the storm. In the back seat, Maya trembled, hands clasped tight, tears blending with raindrops still clinging to her face. Graham glanced back, voice hoarse. "I regret every second I doubted you. If Oliver survives, I'll spend the rest of my life making it right." At the mansion, Dr. Patel was waiting, her eyes heavy with worry. Oliver lay in his crib, his face bluish, breath shallow. She shook her head. "Without an immediate solution, I fear we don't have much time." Maya rushed forward, falling to her knees beside the crib. Her heart twisted at the sight. "Oliver, Mama's here," she whispered, fumbling with the buttons of her blouse. No one stopped her. Everyone seemed to hold their breath, waiting for a miracle. The baby whimpered, lips trembling, searching. When he found the warmth he remembered, Oliver latched on at once. Greedy, desperate. The hoarse cries ceased. His breathing slowed, steadied. The strain in his face eased into peace. His tiny hand clutched at Maya's blouse, unwilling to let go. The room fell silent, broken only by the steady suckling and Graham's choked sobs. He knelt beside them, reaching out to touch Maya's rain-soaked hair. "Thank you. Thank you for coming back." Time seemed to stop. Oliver drank until he was content, then drifted into sleep in Maya's arms, his face serene. Dr. Patel pressed her stethoscope to his chest and finally exhaled. His heartbeat is steady again. This is the bond I spoke of. She is his medicine. Tears streamed down Maya's cheeks as she kissed Oliver's forehead. In that instant, it felt as if the wound of her lost child had begun to mend. This baby wasn't hers by blood, but his tiny heartbeat gave her a reason to keep living. Graham watched them, his heart overflowing with emotion unlike any he had ever known. His voice broke into a whisper. "You haven't just saved my son. You've saved me." Maya lifted her gaze, eyes glistening. "I did it all for Oliver. Don't ever let him suffer another loss." Graham nodded, his voice shattering. "I promise." In the days that followed, the Whittaker mansion began to change. No longer did long nights echo with piercing cries. Instead, the soft rhythm of a child's breath filled the halls as Oliver slept peacefully in Maya's arms. His cheeks regained their rosy glow. His smile returned when he awoke. He clung to Maya as though a missing piece had finally been found. Graham watched quietly, each moment striking his heart with regret, yet soothing it at the same time. Slowly, he learned to set aside his work phone, to give up afternoons once reserved for deals and deadlines, and spend them beside his son and beside Maya. The man who had once commanded a billion-dollar empire now realized there was a more important company he had to build, a family. Sienna left without farewell. The police had opened an investigation into her theft of the medicine, but Graham no longer cared. All his focus was on Oliver, and on the woman he had once cast out in his blindness. One morning, as sunlight streamed through the windows, Graham stepped into the living room. Maya sat with Oliver in her arms, humming a lullaby. The golden light wrapped around them, painting a portrait of a simple, tender family. Graham moved closer, heart racing, and spoke with hesitation. "Maya, I know I don't deserve this, but I have to ask. Will you stay? Not as a worker, but as family? As someone irreplaceable in the life of me and my son?" Maya lifted her gaze, her eyes shimmering. She did not answer at once. Instead, she looked at Oliver, smiling in her embrace, then back at Graham. The old pain was still there, but a fragile trust was beginning to take root. "Oliver needs a family," she said softly. "If you truly mean it, I'll stay." Her words nearly brought Graham to tears. He nodded, voice thick. "I promise I will never let you or Oliver be alone again." Time passed, and the once cold mansion now rang with the sounds of laughter, of gentle voices in conversation. The kitchen, once filled only with the clatter of dishes, now carried the warm scent of cookies Maya learned to bake for Oliver. The vast staircase, once echoing with lonely footsteps, now resounded with playful chases and affectionate calls. People still spoke of the Whittaker family, but no longer in whispers of scandal. They spoke of a billionaire transformed, from iron-hearted magnate to devoted father, from aloof master to a man who had learned to bow his head to keep love close. In the garden behind the mansion, an old figure tended patiently to the roses. Bennett, the man who had once slept beneath a bridge, now found both work and home, his weathered hands nurturing life instead of fighting off the cold. And deep within, Graham knew he owed everything to Maya. Not only because she had saved Oliver, but because she had saved his heart. Everyone in the household, Bennett included, understood the same truth. A second chance can change anyone's fate. When a mansion once drowned in cold silence becomes filled with laughter, we realize that happiness doesn't come from perfection, but from those brave enough to stay and bring healing. What do you think of this story? If it touched you, try giving it a score from 1 to 10 in the comments below. Such a simple number, yet a wonderful way for us to know you're walking alongside this journey. And don't forget to share it with your loved ones. Who knows, they too may find hope in the truth that second chances always exist for hearts that know how to love.